Let's discuss some more of these crucial climate issues with our guests today, Alyssa Gilbert, Director of Policy and Translation at the Grantham Institute, and James Streeter from the InterClimate Network. So, climate change, huge issue, affects every area of our lives. Some people even suffering with climate anxiety. One way to ease said climate anxiety is to empower people. James, let's start with you. That's something that your organisation is working to do.
Yes, thanks, Chloe. Let me just explain very briefly. InterClimate Network is a UK charity where we engage young people at secondary school level and run events throughout the year. Last year, we actually carried out one of the largest surveys of young people on climate change and sustainability. And you're absolutely right. One of the things we found was the challenge with the anxiety, but and this does come from, as you said, this sort of powerlessness. So it's really important that action is something which is promoted as part of education. So I think the sustainability and climate change strategy for education is a good start, and the natural history GCSE will formalise that part of the education system, as opposed to what it's been in the past, which has been down to a few selected individuals.
Alyssa, this is really complicated stuff. There's no simple solutions to climate change. When do you think we should start educating youngsters about climate issue? When's the right time?
Well, I think we should work in the same way that we do in educating people about any kind of issue. We start teaching people the basic principles of asking questions around science, for example, at a very young age, to learn the skills and the ways of thinking that they require so that they can become talented and sophisticated scientists at a university and postgraduate level eventually, or stop somewhere in between and apply those skills. The same is true for climate change, actually. Working on climate change issues actually involves possibly different ways of thinking. We need people to be able to think across different sectors, flexibly solve problems. Those kind of skills we should be building into education from an early age. And additionally, it's important that people appreciate and feel nature, and they understand the environment around them. So the kind of immersive learning, student-led approaches, all of these things can be incorporated in the curriculum from very early on. And I think it was just last week or so, the government published a sustainability and climate change education strategy, or white paper, that came out of the Department for Education. And that encompasses aspects of learning about climate change right from early years all the way up to university, postgraduate, and adult skills.
James, let's bring you in. What sort of response have you had from students that you've been working with the work that you've been doing?
Yeah, the response has been amazing. So firstly, could I just sort of add to Alyssa's answer? I think the really key point in education is the secondary level, because climate change is a complicated subject, and you need the students to be at a level where they can understand and really react and work with that complexity. And also at secondary level, you are made by your teacher and brought along by the school to do things that you would not necessarily do yourself. When you get to university, it becomes rather self-selecting. So I think the secondary education part is absolutely crucial. Now, the GCSE, I think, is great. It's a good start, but it's really important that it cuts across a whole range of subjects. Climate change, as we're seeing, is not just about anymore the biology and the geography. It's about economics, it's about politics, it's about engineering, design, things like this. And also the importance of bringing in the action. What we found through our survey at InterClimate Network is that young people, their awareness is increased. As Lily Cole mentioned in her interview, the awareness when she started was virtually nothing. But what they want to know is what to do around climate change. For example, what to buy that actually is not degrading the environment. Secondly, they want to know, they want leadership. They want the adults in the room, particularly the teachers, to walk the talk and show them what to do. And then I think that thirdly here, there's it's about the buildings and making them actually fit for the future. I think if you put all the schools in the country together, you get an area roughly 2 times the size of Birmingham. So there's a huge potential there for mitigation, but also there are opportunities. I mean, think of the biodiversity opportunities, for example, if you manage to do something across that whole area.
Alicia, just quickly on this, it's not just the youngsters. We've been talking a lot about youngsters and students, is it? It's the whole workforce, really. We need to upskill so they can also work in climate issues. How do we go about doing that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's really important that we make sure that we have the skills available and necessary to actually deliver the net zero and resilient future that we see ahead of ourselves. One of the ways that we can do that is by making sure that our approach to education across all ages, including adult education, is tightly linked to our development of the green skills agenda. And actually, the government has been long promising a green jobs delivery group, which will build on work both on climate education and on the Green Jobs Task Force, so that we can pull together education with skills as soon as possible.
OK, and now let's change subject. Earlier, we were talking about that poll that found more than half of Britons say they support the demands being made by the group Just Stop Oil, but perhaps not their methods. James, let's start with you on protest. There's a fine line, isn't there, between a protest to make a point and then criminal activity?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, first of all, people should, we've got to make it clear, people should be allowed to protest. And it is a really good way of democratising climate change. But you're spot on, it has to be peaceful and legal. Unfortunately, what we're finding is it's increasingly being driven by desperation. People around see that the leadership are not making the decisions and taking the country in the direction they want. So I think it's really important that that people see that protesting comes in different forms. It's not just about the physical obstruction that we've seen. There's also about schools marching for climate, and also more sophisticated protests, such as a legal challenge.
Alyssa, let's get your opinion on this. Recently, we saw new laws for police giving them more powers to take action at protests. Do you think that was needed?
Well, in terms of, I just sort of reiterate what James has said. I think protest and speaking out about climate change in particular has been actually a very important way for the public to actually indicate that the government was behind on their action. This is an area where, if you look towards the school strikes and Fridays for the Future movement of a few years ago, that really woke up politicians to see that such a large part of the population really wanted to see faster action on this issue. I don't think that meant that we need police activity. I think that means that we need government response to these issues.
Alyssa and James, thank you so much for joining us. Really interesting.